So let's turn to the revenue side of the equation. And I put up a chart here, and if you look at the handout, I've got two charts because it really doesn't work. Given the bifurcation, the spread in the ACM between those less well-endowed institutions and up through the more well-endowed institutions, there's a spectrum of the size and level of which the endowment contribution affects the revenue pool. So I just wanted to illustrate two sort of representative examples of what that might look like. So example one is from a rather less well-endowed school. This would not be atypical for one of the schools, the half dozen or so on the left-hand side of my endowment per FTE student chart I showed you earlier. This would not be atypical in that group. And you'll see that the net student revenue makes up about 3/4 of the revenue. So that, did you make your class? You bring in a class 10, 15, 20, 30 few, huge impact on the overall revenue picture. In this case, endowment and gift revenue, and I just want to be clear with distinguishing between those, endowment being the rate of return, the draw from the investments under the endowment, as opposed to the annual one-time gifts, cash gifts that alumni and others donate to the college as part of an annual fund, an annual raising of money that directly goes to help support the budget. And then there's a chunk of other that's things like auxiliaries and other kinds of revenue. And there's quite a bit of, this is where there's a lot of diversity within the ACM in terms of what helps to go in to make the other portion. By contrast, here's a sort of pie chart for a more well-endowed institution, certainly not the most well-endowed institution, but this is the pie chart. Well, Grinnell's an interesting case because of their commitment on the need side of the equation. They're so much more generous than any of the rest of us. So this is just going to work, I think, for us as a representative example. But the endowment piece, you'll see, is 35% in this example. The interesting question there is, why is other so small? Any thoughts on why is the other revenue, why is this seems to suggest that a well-endowed school is less able to raise money through auxiliaries.
They don't need to.
That's one possible answer. One possible answer is they don't need to. Can you think of another? The pie is huge. And so when we think of our ACM institutional types, one area where we're very similar is we all have a very similar kind of array of choices for auxiliary revenue. And so if your pie is twice the size, and yet the auxiliary revenue is pretty much dollar for dollar, not that different from anyone else, it's going to get really tiny. Whereas the gift portion can potentially proportionately stay the same, so that's a bigger total amount. So that's just one where the pie chart can sometimes make you forget the actual amount.